So, without further ado, let's start the discussion. So, I think the topic is about connecting the dots, digital infrastructure as the ultimate catalyst in the Philippines. And I think digital infrastructure is actually we call it foundational technology systems, which are composed of like the power, facilities, data center, connections, and connectivity. So maybe we can start on probably on what do you think is the status of this digital infrastructure in the Philippines? Maybe we can start, Patrick.
Sure. Thank you. Data centers in the Philippines, right? It's a hot topic at the moment. It's been a hot topic for many years and continues to be an area of interest for both local operators and foreign investors looking to operate in the country. Data centers are the foundation of any digital infrastructure. Whether you host it on-prem, whether you do a co-location or a private facility, or work with a local operator to be able to utilize it for your own technology projects at scale. But essentially, when you look at data centers as that core of the infrastructure, it then propels and brings about the requirements for growing economically the ecosystem. So beyond the infrastructure itself, but looking at the talent pool that can support it, looking at the technologies that utilize the capacity, looking at the connectivity measures, and the impact that it brings into the economy. So, to your question, what's the stance on data centers like at the moment? Very much off topic, very much of significant interest, and not just from private enterprises or the private sector or the public sector, but also foreign organizations and multinationals in the context of what we use every day, right? So whether it's WhatsApp, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of the large multinational corporations that own and run these platforms also have interest to be able to come into the Philippines and drive that utilization of infrastructure to better improve user experience, connectivity, and so forth.
Yeah, maybe we can hear also from Pete.
There are different inflection points when we speak of where we are. And just so I have an understanding of the kind of people that we have in the audience, I'm going to play something which would determine who we are speaking of. Does anyone remember the sound of this one? Again, this is a
I guess it's Ericsson or what?
So, judging by the reaction of the people here, one, you just feel your age. The second, for those whose eyebrows are becoming one piece, they're now wondering, I wonder what that is. Well, for those who are smiling and understood what the sound was, this is how we connected to the internet. Quite a while back. First inflection is internet. The second is mobile. Third is cloud. And the last is actually AI that Rakesh was speaking of. Are we ready digitally? We're looking at everything from these 4 points, but we will also have to consider infrastructure. What are we speaking about? This goes not only the data center, but we also speak of the facilities that support that infrastructure. You will have to change our mindset. What are we looking at? We speak of intelligent cities. We speak of townships. Yusek David Almirol this morning was saying about e-governance, the platform. All of these are contributory. Is it here now? Yes, it is. But is it designed to perform as to how it is expected? Not exactly. So this is where the mix of all these variables have to go aligned. And in order to do that, this is where collaborations happen. You work with technology people like the ones here. architects, engineers, designers? Just a curiosity. Who amongst you are technology practitioners who handle IT? Show of hands, please. Quite a number. Anyone here who handles facility, property, building? Quite a few. So, I'm sure you'll understand this. When a building is put up, IT is the last to be called in. Oh, I hear last already. When IT people are brought in and given an instruction, we want the following. We give our recommendations. We always, most likely, are told, no, you cannot do that. Can you do it this way? No, you cannot do that. How about this way? No, you cannot do that. We're already wondering, so why did you call us in the first place? This is where, as I was saying, you will have to place your roadmap at the forefront. It has to be part of your design language. When you design something, you prepare for the inevitable. It's going there. Technology now, you put up something, a building, you may be using Wi-Fi 5, it's already at Wi-Fi 6. By the time you fit to the building, you're already at 7 or 8. So it has to be planned ahead of time. Right now, all the elements are there. The only question is, will you change your mindset and work with everybody else within that team spirit?
Yeah, so thank you, Rookie. So Rookie reminded us about the, I think there's no information technology at that time yet. We call it the telecommunication and data communication department at the time during the 90s. So I think that's how now the digital transformation transformed to a very advanced technology from the 9.6, I heard the 9.6 dialing, and then 19.2 kbps, 64 kbps. So, Magnus, can you say about how far we are in now already in terms of communication? Because that was our challenges during the time. So if we have like connecting between the data center, the mainframe, extended to the provinces using dial-up, and we are happy already if we reach the 9.6 kbps. But now maybe you can share with us what's now our technology in terms of communication.
Okay. Yeah, very good. And I like the panel very much so far. So just to tag on what we just heard here, the example with the dial-up modem, it's quite charming to make such a reflection. In the mobile industry, then, I think the industry as a whole has been very successful to create standards with global reach. Now we have truly global standards. Why is that so important? It's to drive global scale. Today here in the Philippines, you can buy a very advanced 5G smartphone for less than $100. If you look at the technology that goes into that, it's extraordinarily complex. And it can go down at affordable prices for the masses. And think of any other advanced product that sells by those volumes. 1.2 billion smartphones are sold every year. PCs, 400 million, TV sets, 200 million, etc. Nothing is even close to it. So global standards is a very important thing. And what have we done then? In 30 years, the speed has gone up by 1 million times. That's an astonishing record. So that's one way the industry has advanced. Now, with that comes also new opportunities. And that's why we are very much focusing on the fifth generation now. That really has ability to go beyond what we used to, very much a consumer game where you have best effort data. You get what you have available for the time being. But with the fifth generation of mobile systems, we can design traffic flows and services that are tailored to certain needs. Maybe have a very specific delay or latency, as we like to call it. Maybe be responsive in terms of higher throughput, perhaps from the device to the network. And thereby, more segments can be addressed. Enterprises, extraordinarily important, industries, government sectors, and of course consumer cases. And that's why 5G then becomes so important, I argue, to be one of the pillars in driving digitalization. At Ericsson, as slide I want to use is as a triangle. And it has AI, it has cloud, it has mobile network. And if you think of it, with all respect now to my cloud data center partners and AI partners, but if you only have that, you lack a big thing. People tend to move around, and things tend to move around. So the more we leverage the AI potential, the cloud compute potential, we need to be mobile. And those three corners of the triangle have to work together. So then the question is, how we do in the Philippines? The good thing is that we're still early days in the world. 5G is the fastest growing technology in mobile generations. But we are, at the beginning of this year, we were at 26% subscriber penetration. So 3/4 of all the subscribers still have to upgrade. A lot of work to do. And then add enterprises, industries on top of that. In the Philippines, I think we were about 17%, a little bit lower than that. But with the devices now coming down in prices, it will go wider in society. And that's when it's so important that the government side has a foundation that stimulates the private investments. Mobile operators can invest and build the coverage, have the services ready, where then cloud compute and AI can leverage in applications for users. So, linking that to the Philippines, I think the next 2-3 years are truly crucial. Countries that excel and leverage on this potential will be leaders. Those who wait will be laggards. And I think that's a choice that's going to be made now in many nations, deliberately or implicitly.
Yeah, thank you very much for your comment. But actually, one of the challenges when I want to connect it with the data centers in the Ronet area. So I used to be also managing ports operations in the Philippines, and I feel very difficult I'm looking for the 5G connectivity, but then there's a challenge where I look the availability of 5G services among the telcos, and I ended up using satellites. So there is a challenges or roadblock that when we want to connect remote areas like port areas somewhere in Mindanao, Tawi-Tawi, something like that. There's a same issue in terms of communications, 5G. So it ended up using the satellites. So maybe can you also share if there is also about availability challenges in terms of getting connectivity outside the Philippines?
Current technologies have allowed for us to expand our horizon. Used to be, we can only depend on the service providers, those telco brands. And at a certain point in the country's history, there's only one major monopoly. But now we have different players. But when you go to far-flung areas, it's always a question of economics for these providers. Unless there is demand, no infrastructure will be in place. Courtesy of technology, there are other ways and resources. You can use satellite services, or you can build your own private 5G network, dependent on how you plan out your resource. As an example, we are helping out one of our bigger installations, and if you look at their space, it's 1,000+ hectares. But this is way in the mountainous areas, and because it is a plantation, you can use technologies that are line of sight, but you will have to design a whole infrastructure based on the area's topology, where you're going to place strategically, tactically devices that you are going to use. It should be also qualified to be protected of the elements, especially in the Philippines where there's so much rain, and when it's hot, it's really scorching. So these are the conditions that you will have to cover for. So it is always a combination. So we work with the people, our clients, our partners, we work with them to establish first what do you want to adapt. And then number two, we explore the available resources and collaborations that will help address that requirement. the advantage nowadays, and this is, you know, way back when we were so happy that we had 33.6 Kbps for our internet line, who here enjoys 30, kilobytes for your data on your phone? Because right now, you see your data going up MBs, not if you have it in gig. So as the demand increases, the requirements increases, even the expectations increases. So addressing that question, we have now the technology and the facilities to be able to answer these requirements. But you will have to also have the backbone and the backing of experience to support it.
Yeah, so we mentioned about the 5G as a private. Is this possible now that private company can set up their own 5G network?
It is, and in several aspects. One possibility that's absolutely on the market is to have a dedicated private 5G network. Then you have all the equipment in-house. We supply some nuclear power plants in France. They have it. They don't have an internet connection for security reasons. It's sealed off. There are many factories that use it already. Then there are also trade-offs. And everything we segment in 5 different layers. On one extreme, if I put it that way, you have everything privately local at your premises. That's great in terms of managing your own data, managing your own interfaces to the external world. You're on top of that. The other extreme is everything in the public network, but the service is produced as a private network, like a VPN, if I may put it that way. And that has its merits and pros and cons. If the enterprise is, let's say, a railroad company, that is a good solution because the products tend to go around. Then there are steps in between where you have more or less in the public side, in the private side. But the key thing here is that as an enterprise, you choose a setup that fits your needs for data integrity, sovereignty, security, performance, etc. So there are many choices, and it's really up to you as an enterprise. And we have, let's say, very demanding enterprises in these dimensions that have chosen very different kinds of implementation. I can give you one example. The National University Hospital in Singapore, they use XR-assisted surgery. They make a digital twin of the patient, and as they do the surgery, the XR visor overlays the picture of the liver, and the surgeon can be assisted how to cut with precision. That transmission is on a 5G network. Fantastic, right? Obviously, you need high security, reliability of the service. The radio unit is owned by the hospital. It's invisible in the hospital. My phone can't log on there. But the other functionality in the mobile network is produced in the public network but as a private service. And then the application that the surgeon uses is hosted on one of the large American cloud players. And that is posted in the operator's Singtel's premises to ensure the data or the performance is okay. So that's, I think, a case which is from security angle, performance angle, demanding. They have selected to have this hybrid method. That's good for them. For a port, we have ports that have entirely private systems with their rationales. But it's possible. It depends on you, what you want to have.
Yeah. So thank you for the information. So that's why sometimes it came to our mind as the IT operations when we think about where to be locate our data centers because of the challenges in terms of communications between the data centers and the office. So maybe talking of data centers. So we again as the example of Rookie on the 9.6. So that I heard in a data center, which is there is a impression that we need data center because of the mainframes. But is this still applicable? Say, for example, in one of our hospitals, when we define data center, is there any standard that you can say a room is a data center or just a computer room? Can you say anything about that?
Absolutely. So, to Rookie's example about the advent of various stages of technology, internet, mobile, cloud, infrastructure driven by AI, and then coupled with high levels of bandwidth connectivity, all very important facets that are driving a new trend in data center utilization in the Philippines. So, from an industry standpoint, to DCAP, we see a lot of organizations, private sector-led primarily, with interest in running hybrid models. Now, traditional entities, long-standing entities, let's say banks, for example, have traditionally utilized mainframes. Right? They grew up in that era, and in some of the banks that I consult with today, they still continue to use mainframes, but on a smaller scale of what they used to in the 80s and the 90s. And then a lot of that from a DR, backup, or technology strategy standpoint will utilize large elements of public cloud infrastructure services on demand. But it doesn't take away from the fact that privately identifiable information, PII, for, again, the example of banks, still needs to be hosted in the country. And so we see today that banks, as an example, will continue to run, in a general context here, a 50-50 method of between data centers on-prem, locally, private cloud, coupled with a public cloud deployment for test, dev, application development, based on services that they develop in order to go to users. So then we talk about the advent of online banking. Okay? And, I don't have to walk into a branch, we all know the story, it's very easy. But the demand to be able to use that in a low latency, real-time, highly secure model still requires to have the connectivity and the facilities in the country so that they are close to the user and the user experience is high. From a public sector standpoint, we've all seen the news that the government is continuing efforts to explore data centers in the country, potentially building their own. And a lot of it is generally centered on eventually the data sovereignty piece, ensuring that the national data of the Philippines and anybody that operates in the Philippines will be protected, will be secure, and will be maintained in light of all the geopolitical things happening around the world today. So, from a data center standpoint, these are some of the things that we see. There is no one standard framework other than the fact that the trends are moving towards hybrid models. And then if we take that even further, the advent of AI, and again, it's such a broad topic, it's a buzz, and there's many merits and elements that contribute to AI, but we're now talking about models, or models that operate on what people refer to as inference as a service on digitally robust, relevant infrastructure in an age of 2025 beyond mainframes. Looking at the way technologies run in data centers to be able to support that, coupled with high connectivity, coupled with large elements of power, right? So I haven't even touched the surface yet. I'm going to go into the fact that digital infrastructure is the ultimate catalyst, requires a ton of power in the Philippines. And at the moment, power supply is growing. Cost of power is a topic of contention, but the Philippines remains an area of interest for many of these organizations, hyperscalers and alike, coming into the country to build and develop, let's say, the next stages of what mainframes did earlier on to where we are today with the advent of AI.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so you mentioned about power. So maybe Rookie can comment about it, because one of the challenges really is like creation or building or constructing data centers at that cheap, So that's why maybe is it rather than wise to create your own data center, or maybe you just go to the cloud? So maybe Rookie can comment on this. Maybe how does it cost you if you build your own data center rather than probably go to the cloud? Because I guess the majority of us here is still maintaining we call it data center, but there's only one data rock. And there's only like three servers, but we call it data center. So maybe can you share to us through what could be the pros if we have this kind of situation?
In the last 5 years, so much has happened. As an example, we're talking about internet and we're talking about servers, data centers. Who amongst you here remember March 2020? Raise of hands.
Or towards
It was the lockdown when COVID happened. Nobody was able to burst through. NCR was locked down. The borders were locked. The challenge with one, those who were not on cloud and everything on premise had zero access to their information in the office. Especially with people who are not able to, especially when the residences are outside of NCR, they're not able to go to the office. Number two, everything planned out for 2019 for implementation of 2020 was thrown out the window. Everybody was going cloud. Everybody was doing access from the outside. Everybody was taking steps. Now, infrastructurally, was everybody ready? Not everyone was ready. It was not tested whether if you work from home, that would be safe. You'll be using units that are not tested, not by your security officer. You're not sure if the internet you're using is safe and secure. So you went outside the boundaries of what you initially protected as to be safe. Then the whole world started to change. Work from home became a buzzword. Work from everywhere is becoming a buzzword. There was a high take-up of internet. Now the question of data centers. Do you hold it in-house? Courtesy of the economics of working from home, all your personnel are at home, so you do not have them in the office. Do you still need the space? Then you go cloud. When you go cloud, there are options for colocation, managed services. You start the balance of either discontinuing some personnel whose functions handle those, and then relegate it to a managed service company. So things started to evolve. But come 2025, everybody's finding out it is not always efficient. Working from home, there's so many memes on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, how people try to circumvent their definition of yes, I am out co-working when it's programmed otherwise. But at the end of the day, the ultimate target is to make everything efficient and convenient. So the question is now, are you infrastructure ready? Have you determined in your own roadmap, do I need to have a building? If I'm going to increase, yes. Why? Because when you access from the outside, you increase every variable you have. Processing power, bandwidth, connectivity. The one that goes in, the one that goes out, cybersecurity. You're now more guarded than ever. Because your thinking goes from the outside in and not from within only. So these are elements that you'll have to consider. And you are working with people who, at the onset, you've never worked with actually. You have to rely on service providers. You have to rely on collaboration partners. And every time you increase the demand, actually the Rakesh had one slide that says, is digital infrastructure 100% possible? It's possible, but the requirements also will track up. You need more power, you need more bandwidth, and you need people behind those desks to manage and monitor everything that's going on.
Yeah, so again, so what I was saying was it's the channels of communications. But what can you say about that diagnosis in terms of communication? Is the 5G possible to use as a communication line between your data center to your user going to the cloud? Because sometimes this is our dilemma in terms of putting our servers and applications on the cloud. What could be the available communication line between our users, especially on the remote areas, like, for example, hospitals and remote areas, something like that. So can you forward?
Sure, it's absolutely possible. Then, with anything doing it practically, you have to see how fast should it be ready and where should it be available. But we have already today countries, South Korea being one example, that has over 95% population coverage with 5G. Another remarkable example is India. And now if you think of the spend per month by subscribers, it's quite comparable to the Philippines. All major cities are covered. So I think India has through two private networks now, a fantastic platform to drive the innovation on. Is all of geographical India covered? Absolutely not. Are there roads all over in the world? No, they're not. Right? They are where they need to be, given 130 years to build them. Now, with 5G, you certainly not build it faster than 130 years, that's for sure. But you take things in step. The fact that all cities are covered, major cities are covered in India, is a fantastic achievement. India now has plans for going further and further out. Some with government incentives, ensuring there's backhaul, what you saw there is their remote hospital, but even to villages. And the Indian definition of village is, for me, as a Sweden, big city. But anyway, it's a lot of people. But to make sure there is connectivity, fiber connectivity to these places, so that the private mobile operators can invest with the radio connection to the local people living there. And that is ongoing on a wide scale. Right? There will always be an even further out remote place that is not covered yet. Eventually most of it will, but some will not. And that is a question on what's the rationale for that. Well, if you look in the world today, it is the ones who are not using a mobile communication. The vast majority of them are in Cambridge areas. That is to say, there are other reasons why they opt not to have a connection. There can be positive advice, there can be interest, and it can be ability. So, if you want to go to onboard the next billion people, if I put it that way, start looking in areas where you have the coverage. That's a brutal fact, so to say.
I'm going to add to that, right? So, in the interest of connectivity in remote, undeveloped, developed areas of, let's say, the Philippines, that's equally important for the data centers to also ensure that connectivity. So most of the operators in the Philippines today are carrier neutral, enabling connectivity with all of the major operators. And that level of connectivity is to gain access to the facility and navigate the transmission of information between both sites. Equally being prepared in remote locations as an example, I have seen a trend where organizations are using hybrid models to make do with what they have with limited infrastructure in those areas. So they will rely on 5G connectivity to be able to connect, maintain, manage data applications within the context of an enterprise, but connect through these methods and these means by leveraging both operators in the Philippines as well as their own public cloud infrastructure. And interestingly enough, on that point, to enhance and help with the connectivity, a lot of the major hyperscalers that we all know of and deal with in some capacity, they have major footprints in all of the telco locations or points of presence around the north and south of the Philippines that enhance and enable the way that they connect, the way that they maintain their data, based on where their utilization is to their consumer base, or for use in their own internal enterprise.
I'll touch on what both have said. Mentioned South Korea, the minimum internet download speed is about 1 gig. I remember one of the smart cities were there. And you touched on healthcare. I worked in healthcare. We were both colleagues at one point in the same industry. there's what you call robotic surgery, where the doctors are in another country or another building, and you have a spider-looking robot that works on you. So if you have language support, like ones you have in Singapore, South Korea, fantastic. But being in the Philippines, where internet is more fun, so can you imagine somebody remotely operating on you, and your support structure is our current internet? It becomes a very interesting situation if you consider what can be the outcome. That's why when you do the infrastructure nowadays, I'm just curious, how many here has more than one service provider for your institution? How many here only has one? Exactly. So you depend more than one. You need to load balance, making sure that if one drops, you're still there. So these are the critical elements. And the other, utilization. AI is helping a lot, especially for providers, determining where the demand is from mobile use, who downloads what, from commercial reader, and then the influx of specific satellite provider who allowed for both commercial and retail platforms to be into the market. So these are options now allowed. So moving forward, where one can lead, we're still following the inflection points. We're still on the internet, we're still mobile, we're still using cloud as an option, and it's hybrid, and AI. And at the end of the day, now we have to consider, is the data center going to be in our building or somebody else's? Do we manage that one, or do we have to manage that? So the whole ecosystem is still moving around the same platform. It's still the same mix.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah, just to tag on what you're saying there, who has one or two service providers? Yeah, that's a brutal record that you just showed here. I'm of the belief now, as we go more and more into 5G world, and operators can offer differentiated services, and users, consumers and enterprises, will then buy that on a more selective basis. Then it will be a competitive advantage for any mobile operator how well they can deliver that. Because you pay a bit extra and you want that to be delivered. Just imagine if you buy an airline ticket, business class, and they put you in economy, you wouldn't accept that. The same thing will happen in the future. If you as a consumer, which you can do today with some operators, pay a bit extra when you're at today Uganda or concert or whatever, and you get a more service secure service when you do a video shoot and upload that to your friends. If I start to stagger it's not good, what will you do? You will complain because you are paying something that they didn't deliver. So going forward, it will be a trademark how well you deliver the services that you are offering to your customers. And that's a paradigm shift. And in your case, then, a medical hospital that relies on the communication, they will pay off in comparison to the consumer. It better be delivered. There will be parts that are partially system. Right? The right moment they will require a certain service. So we're changing the way the business will be done here. Then another sort here of the coverage, where is the service available? It's also the choice by the operators what customer segment they address. I take Australia. Telstra has by far the largest geographical coverage. If you want to go out in the boulevards on the road, select Telstra. If you're in the major cities, you have 3 operators to choose from, and you pick the one that you like the most. So for Telstra, it's a differentiator to say that if you want the best coverage, go with us. Their competitors, with their, let's say, assets, have chosen another way to communicate to the customers. And that's okay, I think. And you as a customer make a choice. Going forward, that choice will also be on what services are delivered to me in the right way.
I'll add to that, right? So that's a very good point too. I'm an Australian, so I know Telstra very well. And if I compare the size of the market in Australia, the demand, and the population, very significantly different here in the Philippines. Now, I think congestion on local networks is probably more of a challenge here, that we do have good infrastructure in the Philippines, and we have it in Australia. But the amount of population here, around 120 million versus 27 million people in Australia, it's very different to how networks can operate and support that service overall. In fact, when you take a look at the locations here, you know, every time I'm in a congested area, my connectivity fails. And so I think, as with most of you here, everyone will agree that you all carry 2 phones, 2 carriers. It's pretty much a standard.
How many people here have more than one phone?
Right? So, but the thing is, what we're seeing, and through what I've seen in our engagements with data centers, is the Philippines, the 120 million people population, is the highest penetration rate of utilization on social media. Right? So, truth be told, guys haven't seen it, Google it, Facebook. The consumption at the consumer level here is insane, right, compared to every other Asian country, in fact, around the world. So that's number one, social media. But then the availability of devices, you know, 120 million people, say on average, everybody carries at least 2 devices, right? So it's common that these are the components from the consumer standpoint that's driving the proliferation of the need for better critical infrastructure support. So what I'm saying is, at an inflection point, we're seeing consumerism drive the need for robust digital infrastructure. We have data centers here in the Philippines that have been built specifically in the last 3 to 4 years, and existing operators that have upgraded to be able to support that. And then you take into consideration how advancements in specific industries are utilizing technology and the need to be able to have that level of connectivity to support the needs to their end users.
I like to, there are 2 words that Patrick mentioned: consumerism, and I'll say economics. With the offers that are coming out from different providers, there are 2 bywords that are most commonly used now, especially within offices: CapEx and OpEx. It's all about funds, resources, budgets. For those who are reporting to the board of directors, especially once it comes to planning season, who here amongst you are finding it so easy to request for budgets from the board? Oh, there's only one.
So,
Good for you. Everybody's doing
you're
this.
lucky.
So, now, once you have all these elements, we are going towards a digital future. It goes down to infrastructure, but it also concerns the word budget, investments. This is where there are other providers who now have platforms that allow for operational expense models. They do a layaway. You can do that for servers, you can do that for appliances, you can do that for endpoints, for the managed services, even for the location for your servers. So now it becomes a question: do I maintain it in-house on premise, or do I have it sourced out? Even on cloud. The other, I'm sure there are some here who would be asking, what do you say now to the finance people? Well, I don't pay amortization, I don't have depreciation expenses, my EBITDA is healthy, and I'm not even needing to insure the machines because it's not mine, it's theirs. It's covered under the fees. So there are different approaches nowadays as to how to establish a digital direction, especially for the digital future. There is now a way through. It's no longer as like before, I need to buy and I need to pay 50% down payment and the next balance will be in the next 6 months. Now it's no longer. Contracts can go extend 3 to 5 years.
Correct. So yeah, thank you very much for this. But before we ask them for a parting words, is there
Any questions from people here?
or maybe comments about the digital infrastructure?
Feel free to ask us anything.
So okay, maybe as a parting words, in terms of security, because we talked about AI, data centers, cloud. So what can you say about it? Because in terms of security, when we mentioned also about board. So when we present normally to the board, it's always say, oh, you are referring to the cloud. So, and then the next question is it not secured? And you are using a mobile phone line going to your application of the cloud. Can you see, comment on in terms of security, how really reliable in terms of accessing to the cloud or maybe collocation, meaning it's not your own data center, but the data is outside your premises.
I'll speak first. Whoever will tell you that we're guaranteed to be 100% secure, they are lying to your face. That's a difficult thing to claim. You can only be as secure as to how you prepare your structure to be. As simple as, have you ever tried looking and searching about your name? Whether it be on Google or Bing, type your name. Look at the photos, look at the information. You might see quite a lot on the internet about yourself. Pictures that you've never seen, your information, on certain occasions, sometimes even your personal details like your passport, driver's license, is out there. So you can only be as vigilant as can be, dependent on how you build your structure. Second, the services that you secure have their own layer of security. So it adds on to whatever it is that you're preparing. So the whole burden is not on you. The third, whatever it is that you can afford.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Ruki. Maybe Marcus?
So security is of course a very relevant area where we invest a lot. And just as you heard here, to claim that nothing can be breached would be very wrong. It's an ever-changing landscape, and therefore we need to change all the way. For anyone who invests in us, I always demand trust. Do they trust what we do, what we've done, and what we're doing in the future? We have a very rigid setup, how we work with security. We know how we validate, procure sub-suppliers, components, code, how we screen our employees, how we screen what they're doing from a security point of view, how we assess it when it's being put together. And then important, how it's being deployed in the field. It doesn't matter if you have a very secure product and too many people on the other side have passwords and they're not very good, etc. So we have a continuous way of assessing the installations in the field. And on top of that, we have a 24/7 set of people that is in contact in all the 180 countries and territories where we operate, where we have installations. If an incident happens, they know it right away. They come out with directions on how to isolate it, and they analyze it, and they come with a remedy. And then we update our products. It's an ever-changing landscape, and I'd say we do our utmost to be ahead of the curve. And I'm happy to discuss why you should trust us.
Thank you, Marcus.
And I agree. So you have to assume in this day and age that you will be hacked, you will be attacked, and that any information you put online or is accessible in a remote capacity has already been compromised. To the comments of trust and design, a lot of it really comes down now to risk mitigation. And the process, the structure that you have in play, that you apply, or that you design specifically for that, will help you understand the ever-evolving landscape of cybersecurity. Through DCAP, we've been able to formulate a playbook, a baseline playbook that allows organizations who, from a data center standpoint or from a remote standpoint, managing private and public clouds, can manage and secure their workloads for their consumers, for their enterprises. And again, cybersecurity is a very broad topic, but if you follow the standard rules of assuming you've already been attacked, and understand how you're going to mitigate the work in your entire ecosystem, supported 24/7, third-party partners, etc. These are all elements that help you detect and resolve things in a very quick way.
All right. So thank you very much, our esteemed visionary leaders. And once again, thank you also for all your participations in this discussion. Again, good afternoon. Thank you.